ain't got a seat at the table, best believe you the damn menu. And whoever said that, facts, straight like that. Let me say it again. If you ain't got a seat at the table, best believe you the damn menu. Straight like that. Welcome to another episode of Cess Talk Sports, B-Wise, Poly Sports Tea Time, where we don't just break down the game, we break down the game behind the game. Y'all know me, Cess, your favorite auntie with Uncle Tendencies. And today, we going there. This ain't just hoops, it's hustle. It's power, it's equity, it's legacy. And per usual, I'm not riding solo. My partner in Power Moves is in the building. Political Lil. Talk to the people.
Hey, glad to be back. And you already know, Auntie, when we talk sports here, we're talking power, race, economics, and culture. We're not here for the surface stats. We're diving deep into why systems look the way they do. And more importantly, who's left out. And today's episode, this one is personal because we're asking the question that sits behind all the silence and strategy. Why are Black WNBA players not in every room where decisions are made?
That part. Because let's be all the way clear. Black women are the WNBA. They run it on the court, own the highlight reels, move the merch, and keep the culture lit. But when it's time to talk paychecks, policies, promo deals, and who's really profiting, yeah, they ghost us from the rooms that matter. Meanwhile, the business of the game is evolving fast. We got NIL deals rewriting the college blueprint, media brands flipping the narrative, player-led movements like Unrivaled shaking the system, and the CBA battle bubbling up that could flip the whole league. The shift is here, but let's ask the real question. Will Black women finally hold the or just be the face they market while somebody else cashes in?
Exactly. So today we're pulling back the curtain on what agency really looks like in sports and what it means to move from symbolic representation to structural power. We're going to break down how deals get made, who controls the money and the messaging, and why it's not enough to just be the face of the league. This episode is a follow-up to the convo we had on politics of representation. But now we're going even deeper because this ain't just about being seen. It's about owning the room, setting the agenda, and cashing in like the franchise you are. Let's get into it.
Let's get one thing straight, fam. When we say agency, we're not talking about no hollow girl power slogan slapped on a sneaker ad. Nah, agency means control, period. It's about who calls the shots on how they're represented, where they play, what they get paid, how long they stay, and what the exit strategy looks like when the lights cut off. Black women been the engine, the pulse, and the highlight reel of the WNBA since day one. But too many of them still don't own their story. They don't control the media lens. They don't write the contract fine print. They don't shape the work conditions that impact their bodies, health, and futures. That ain't agency. That's visibility with no power. And that's a setup. Now let's talk equity. Since folks love to throw that word around. Equity ain't a check. It ain't a promo. It's not some one-time thanks for your service bonus. Equity is ownership. It's real investment. It's being in the damn boardroom when the next TV deal gets negotiated. It's having a voice in maternity policies, endorsement standards, career development, and post-hoop legacy planning. It's the difference between being a talent and being a stakeholder. And let's be real. Black women get rolled out on promo teams, dropped into diversity panels, and spotlighted on social justice nights. But when it's time to map out the long game, they're not even in the building. Selling out jerseys is cute. Owning the licensing rights to those jerseys, that's power. So let's draw that line bold between representation and control. Being the face of the league without being the force behind the strategy is just another glossy remix of exploitation. Let's not dress it up. You can be the star of a Gatorade commercial and still fly coach on a back-to-back. You can drive historic viewership and still be left out of the call deciding how revenue is split. That ain't equity. That's optics. That's theater. And don't even get me started on symbolic inclusion. This country is built on it. We know the play. Smile for Women's History Month. Get the retweet on Juneteenth. Maybe even land a limited edition trading card. But when it's time to sign a policy, negotiate ownership terms, build generational wealth, inclusion without influence is a performance, not progress. So as we step into this new business era in women's sports, with NILs popping, media empires rising, Unrivaled shaking the league, and the CBA battle looming, don't lose focus. The mission is not just to get a seat at the table, it's to buy the damn building.
Says you preaching right now. But let me build on that. The illusion of progress is dangerous because it makes people believe the work is done. But Black women athletes are still locked out of critical decision-making rooms. And too often, it's framed as coincidence rather than design. Agency means autonomy. It means not having to depend on someone else's approval to express your full athletic, financial, and cultural potential. For far too long, Black women have been told to be grateful for visibility while being denied the infrastructure to leverage that visibility into long-term gains. That's a rigged system, not a progressive one. And equity is about more than equality. Equality says everybody gets a chair. Equity asks who built the table, who picked the chairs, and who wrote the guest list. It's about systemic access, not surface level representation. If we're not talking about shared ownership models, equity stakes, and brand partnerships, or Black women sitting on the hiring committees and media boards, then we're not talking about real change. The power structure in professional sports is set up to benefit those who already have institutional proximity. Black women are still asked to perform excellence while navigating policies they didn't help write. That's why so many are building their own lanes, because the roadblocks in the official route were never designed with us in mind. And what's especially dangerous is how symbolic inclusion gets weaponized. It becomes the shield used to silence critique. Look at how many women are in the W. Black women are in the W. They say, oh, wasn't she on the magazine cover last month? But let's be clear, presence does not equal power. It's easy to prop up a few stars for marketing purposes, while the rest are overlooked, underpaid, and strategically ignored when real decisions get made. Symbolism without substance is a distraction, and it's often used to pacify calls for equity with performative progress. So we're drawing a line in the paint this episode. We're talking about agency that's backed up by structure. We're talking about equity that's measured in real outcome, ownership, policy influence, and financial freedom. This ain't about being visible. It's about being in control. And if we're serious about building a new business model, then Black women need to be at the blueprint stage, not just featured on the billboard. Now, when we talk about the rooms where decisions are made, we're not just throwing out a metaphor. We're talking about a concrete power hub that shapes the future of women's sports. Now, let's lay it out. You got the league offices where rules, branding, and revenue streams are decided. Then there's team ownership. Those folks aren't just writing checks. They're setting the tone, hiring coaches, and influencing league culture. Don't forget broadcasting and media, because whoever controls the camera controls the narrative. Sponsorship and marketing deals, that's the money machine. And of course, labor unions and the CBA negotiating table, where quality of life and long-term player rights are won or lost. Each of these spaces hold massive influence. So the critical question is, how many Black women are actually in these rooms? Now, let's be honest. The answer across the board, not enough. In league offices, the upper ranks are still overwhelmingly white and male, with a sprinkle of a white woman in an executive role. There are 0 Black women team owners in the WNBA. That's right, none. When it comes to broadcasting, Black women are often relegated to the sideline commentary or guest analyst role, while the most consistent seats go to the legacy hire or former players with more media-friendly aesthetics. Even when a Black woman breaks through, it's framed as exceptional, not institutional. That tells you the room was never built with us in mind. Now look at sponsorship and endorsements. Brands are quick to align with white athletes, even those newer to the league, while Black veterans get overlooked or typecast into tougher, gritty branding. Never soft, never glamorous, rarely lucrative. And labor negotiation, historically, Black women have done emotional labor for advocating for better travel conditions, maternity rights, and pay equity. But they're not always given the title, the seat, or the credit when policy is written. Think about that. How many Black women do you see leading the charge at the collective bargaining table, not just as players, but as strategists, lawyers, and negotiators? So when people ask, why aren't Black women just starting their own thing? The truth is they are. But the fact that they are forced to create parallel systems like Unrivaled just to access equity tells you everything about how the mainstream model was built to exclude them. Until Black women are consistently in rooms of power, writing the bylaws, calling the marketing meeting, shaping the media contracts, And every win on the court is just that, a win on the court. And we're playing a bigger game than that.
Lil, you just laid out the whole damn playbook. But let me zoom out real quick and frame this. With some context, the system hopes we keep missing. See, it's not just about being in the room. It's about the terms Black women enter on. Because 9 times out of 10, by the time they let us in, the vision been set, the money been split, and the decisions are already made. That ain't inclusion. That's tokenization. If they call you in after the contract's drafted, after the cameras are rolling, just to make the rollout look diverse, you're not in the room. You're in the margins. And presence without power, that's just another version of being silenced. We've seen this in boardrooms, campaigns, classrooms, but sports slick with it because they hide behind fandom, performance, and team spirit while keeping the same structural gatekeeping alive and well. Now let's talk psychological toll because this part don't get said enough. Imagine being the engine, but not being allowed to touch the steering wheel. Imagine being the draw, the reason people watch, the face on the poster, and still finding out about major league decisions the same time fans do on Twitter. That's not partnership. That's not respect. That's exploitation. And the message it sends is crystal clear. We love your labor, but we don't value your leadership. And now let's get surgical because the long-term impact is even deeper. When Black women are locked out of rooms where legacies are built, it don't just affect the now, it erases the future. No ownership equals no generational wealth. No executive pipeline equals no mentorship for the next ones coming up. No control over, no power in how you're remembered when the sneakers come off. We're not just losing checks, we're losing memory, momentum, and infrastructure. This ain't about surviving another season, it's about securing sovereignty. Because if you're dominating the league, you should damn well have access to the boardroom, the war room, and the green room. Otherwise, we just watch a queen's hoop in the kingdom they don't own. And that can't be the legacy. So yeah, fam, this next part, this is where the rubber meets the receipts. Because if you really want to trace power, follow the money. The WNBA is a product, and Black women are the engine behind that product. But the folks cashing the biggest checks, 9 times out of 10, they ain't Black. And they damn sure ain't on the court. That's the paradox. Black excellence makes the league valuable, but that value rarely makes it back to Black hands. Let's break down the ecosystem. When a Black star dominates, jersey sales go crazy. Viewership spikes. Ticket sales jump. Social media buzzes. That momentum don't just feed the player's brand. It feeds the entire league's valuation. It brings in TV contracts, sponsorships, media partnerships. But where does that revenue go? Back to ownership, back to media execs, back to corporations. And most of those folks ain't Black, ain't women, ain't ever played a quarter. So let's be real. Your talent, their profit. Your likeness, their legacy. Now contrast that with how some white players are positioned. They don't always have the stats. They don't always have the accolades, but they get the bag because they're framed as marketable, safe, crossover stars. Meanwhile, Black women got to over-deliver every night and still get labeled too aggressive, too political, or too niche. That ain't just bias. That's economic manipulation. That's capitalism in a jersey. See, so no, we can't talk about equity without asking the hard questions. Who gets paid, how much, and for what? Because if Black women keep driving the culture, powering the product, and carrying the league, but still end up underpaid, underpromoted, and underrepresented in ownership, then this ain't just a flawed business model. It's a plantation with a press pass. And yeah, I said what I said.
Ooh, Cess, you broke it down. Let's ride that wave and talk about how the commodification of Black bodies didn't just start with the W. This is a historical pattern, one that dates back to the very foundation of America's economics. The Black body has always been seen as something to be exploited, packaged, and sold, from the cotton fields to Olympic podiums. What changed is the backdrop. Today it's arenas, reality shows, and sneaker campaigns. But the logic is still the same. Extract that talent, monetize that image, and keep the control. Now here's where it gets especially twisted. Black women in the WNBA often don't even own their narrative. They're forced to conform to a market that doesn't fully embrace them unless they're entertaining, non-threatening, and quiet about race and gender politics. If they speak up, they get labeled divisive. If they market themselves with authenticity, they're told, oh, you too urban. Meanwhile, white counterparts are praised for being edgy and trailblazing, just for doing half as much. And again, that impacts money. It impacts how sponsorships are allocated, how brands pick ambassadors, and how the public consumes those choices. it also impacts their legacy. If a black woman who built this league can't build wealth from it, what are we really doing? You can't keep asking the same group of people to do the heavy lifting for the league legitimacy, for media respect and cultural capital without giving them a real stake in the reward. And this isn't about bitterness, it's about business. If the model is built on your brilliance, but not to your benefit, it's time to flip that model, either burn it down. So yeah, follow the money. Ask who profits from black bodies in motion. Ask who owns the camera, the microphone, the press release, and the sneaker contract. And then ask yourself, why aren't the women doing the most to grow the game, the ones running it? Because until they are, we're just watching a game that's been fixed from the start. Now, if we're going to talk about exclusion, we have to be willing to name names and track patterns. And let's start with A'ja Wilson, 3-time MVP, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, champion, a leader. Yes, she has never been positioned by the league or the media as the face of the WNBA. Now, that role seems reserved for someone else, someone more marketable, or someone more white. When A'ja tweeted, I can't even get a shoe deal, she wasn't whining. She was telling the truth about how black excellence gets overlooked while white potential gets overfunded. And now we see the same cycle repeating with Angel Reese, who's constantly under media fire for being confident, for being too black, or being unapologetic. Meanwhile, the market is slow to capitalize on her value unless it's through controversy. Let's talk about mismarketing opportunity. Where's the signature Nike campaign for the black women who built the league? Where's the gate aid that centers players like Chelsea Gray, Jaquel Jones, or Natasha Cloud? These women show up, show out, and sell tickets. But when it's time for glossy magazine covers, daytime segments, and branded documentaries, their seats get handed to somebody else. ESPN has no problem covering the drama around black players, but rarely covers the visions black players bring. It's intentional erasure wrapped in algorithm-friendly storytelling. Let's take the same lens to coaching. Look at Becky Hammond, former WNBA star turned assistant coach for San Antonio Spurs. She was immediately groomed for NBA leadership and eventually landed the highest paying coaching job in the WNBA. But Dawn Staley, a college multiple champion, Olympic gold medalist, cultural shifter, proven leader, until 2025, she was never seriously courted for an NBA gig. That's not just oversight, that's a barrier. And it tells us the league doesn't mind honoring black women, kind of after the fact, as long as it doesn't mean giving them real time power in male-dominated spaces. And it's not just about players or coaches. It's the entire support system, the sport agency, and legal landscape for women basketball is still overwhelmingly white and male. There's a lack of black female agents, attorneys, deal makers advocating for these women off the court. And when you're negotiating $1 million contracts and intellectual property right, who represents you matters. Without cultural competency and advocacy, black players end up under-leveraged, under-marketed, and of course, underpaid. It's exclusion by design, subtle, structural, and of course, devastating.
Lil, what you just laid out, that's why this convo ain't about sympathy. It's about systems. Because exclusion don't always show up with a bullhorn. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it slides in unnoticed. It's the silence after a record-breaking stat line. It's who gets booked to speak on the free agency panels. It's the sneaker collabs that don't drop. The documentaries that never get greenlit. The executive jobs that stay under consideration but never make it to offer. And when a black woman speaks on it, now she's the problem. Divisive, difficult, too loud. As if this damn system wasn't broken before she even opened up her mouth. Let's call it like it is. Angel Reese gets hit with a controversial label for celebrating. Doing what white players been doing with applause for A'ja Wilson, the face of the league by performance and presence, is told to wait her turn, while a rookie gets crowned overnight. These aren't one-offs. They're playbook moves. Proof that this league, this media structure, this culture ain't built to reward black women for being great. It's exhausting. Because for every highlight, there's a headline ready to undercut it. For every viral moment, there's a backlash loaded and waiting. But here's what they don't expect. Black women keep pushing. They build with less, lead through more, and create in spite of it all. They expose the whole machine just by refusing to break under it. Because Black women ain't just athletes. They're strategists, storytellers, system disruptors. When they speak, it ain't just personal. It's a masterclass in calling out invisible architecture. And trust, it shakes the room. So let's get into these real life case studies because they ain't hypotheticals, they're receipts. We see the pattern, we know the play, and now it's time to write a whole new one. Because if exclusion is baked into the foundation, you don't renovate, you rebuild. And Black women, they ready with blueprints, power tools, and purpose. If exclusion is the disease, innovation is the cure. And Black women in sports, they're already writing prescriptions. Let's start with Nafisa Collier, co-founded Unrivaled. Not just a side hustle, not just a summer league. This is a new system. Player owned, player run, player first. They're not waiting for a seat. They're building the table, flipping the calendar, shifting the power, and taking their cut of the profits. That's what power looks like, not access, ownership. Look at Candace Parker, straight up pioneer, investing in brands, launching production houses, sitting at equity tables before folks knew what equity meant. She's not just a broadcaster, she's a boss. Chinea Gumake, she built her lane, turned it into a freeway, and now she's making sure the next generation can ride with her. Court, studio, boardroom, values intact. She's not just asking for visibility, she's investing in it. Now let's talk Flau'jae Johnson. This young queen is a whole movement by herself. Rock Nation signee, podcaster, hooper, brand ambassador, culture carrier. And she ain't diluting none of it. She's proof that Black girls don't have to choose. They can be everything, both and more. She's not just building a brand, she's laying down generational bricks. Now zoom out. Look at the wave. Platforms like Players TV and Boardroom aren't just media experiments, they're power statements. Black athletes are done being featured. They're becoming founders. They're not just content, they're executive producers. They're not just hype, they're strategy. And the message is crystal. We ain't just in the game, we flipping the scoreboard. Because this ain't just about going viral. It's about owning the story, the platform, and the check tied to it. It's not fame for the sake of fame. It's freedom with a plan. So when we talk about the future, understand this. It won't be handed to us. It'll be built by us. And Black women already laying the foundation.
What we're witnessing is a fundamental shift from representation to sovereignty. For so long, the model of Black women in sports was built around making it. Make the league, make the endorsement list, make it into the room. But the game has changed. Now it's about owning it, owning the brand, owning the league, owning the media. This is no longer about getting a seat at the table. It's about owning a damn blueprint. Take Nafisa doing with Unrivaled. That's not just innovation. It's economic resistance. It says, we see how you exploit our labor, and we're not going to wait for the scraps. We're going to create something new. And the genius of that model is that it's sustainability. By shifting the season and building a platform where women athletes are stakeholders, it's disrupted not just scheduling, but power dynamics. And once the model proves profitable, it's going to spark copycats. And that's the point. Flau'jae, Candace, Shingy, these are multi-hyphenated women. And in the past, that would have been seen as doing too much. But now it's a standard. Being multifaceted isn't a threat. It's a strategy. These women understand the media landscape, the NIL landscape, and the corporate space. And they're not asking for permission to be big. They're creating synergy across every platform, fashion, content, sport activism. It's not just a hustle. It's a holistic power building. So when we talk about a new business model, we're not just talking contracts and endorsements. We're talking about reimagined value systems where Black women define their worth. They set the terms, where they profit from the culture, not just produce it. Because once the architects own the design, the structure can finally reflect the truth. And the truth is this: Black women are the game. And now they're claiming the game-changing title too.
Hey, real spill. If you don't own it, you don't control it. And this sports game, ownership ain't just a title, it's the blueprint. It's who sets the vision. It's who hires the GM. It's who decides what stories hit the screen and who gets cut from the script. Ownership determines the culture, the checkbook, the community impact, and the legacy. When Black women get in that owner's box, we don't just switch out the face at the table. We flip the mission, the money, the media strategy, and the whole soul of the. We don't just make it look good. We make it mean something. Ownership is the end game. That's where the real power lives. That's where we stop asking for access and start moving with authority. But we got to keep it real too. There's roadblocks everywhere, and they're not accidental. They're engineered to keep us outside the power circle. Let's start with capital. Black women, we don't have equal access to VC money, private equity, or that quiet old money that funds ownership takeovers. That ain't coincidence. That's financial gatekeeping. We show up with resumes, receipts, cultural capital, and fan bases that sell out arenas. And the answer we get, wait your turn. But real talk, who decides when our turn comes? And why it always seems to skip us? Now add league resistance into the mix. Every time black folks, especially black women, start building our own structures, creating new business models, or threatening the comfort of the status quo, the pushback is instant. The side eyes get loud, the silence from sponsors gets even louder. Because ownership shifts the power. And when we own, they can't control the narrative, the payroll, or the future. Look at how folks treated Unrivaled, skeptical, dismissive, silent. Because the league ain't just player, it's a black woman power. And that makes them uncomfortable. Because it's not just a hoop dream, it's a power shift. In corporate America, they love to throw money behind the moment, but ask them to invest in a black-owned sports franchise. That's not oversight. That's a strategy to jam the pipeline. But here's what they didn't account for. We already got the blueprint. Serena and Venus Williams helped build Angel City FC, a team rooted in equity, purpose, and long-game vision. They didn't wait for a seat. They created the boardroom. Renee Montgomery made history as co-owner of the Atlanta Dream, after using her voice to call out political injustice from within the league. She ain't just changing policy, she's changing power dynamics. These women didn't wait for a handout or a headline. They built what they knew we deserved. Because when black women sit at the top, the system don't just get more inclusive, it gets more efficient, more visionary, more profitable. That's the real flex. That's the blueprint. And we're not asking for permission to follow it. We already in motion.
Ownership is the political economy of sports in its rawest form. If labor is the foundation, then ownership is the penthouse. And black women are rarely even handed the blueprint. But when we talk about ownership, we're not just talking about team shares or boardroom seats. We're talking about owning media platforms, production companies, training academy, NIL agencies, and sport law firms. Because the real wealth in sports doesn't come from playing the game. It comes from owning every layer around the game. And yet every ownership conversation we have reveals how the system protects itself. Capital is one hurdle, yes, but so is credibility bias. Even black women with elite credentials are often treated as emotional, risky, or not business-minded enough to run a franchise or manage a multi-million-dollar media deal. This isn't just economics. It's anti-blackness in a blazer. It's a narrative war disguised as a market decision. But the irony is, black women are often the most culturally competent, physically responsible, and community-connected people in the sports industry. We also have to ask who gets to fund the future. Corporations flood white athletes with endorsement dollars and production budgets, but when black women bring an innovative ideal to the table, suddenly there's a lack of alignment. That's code for control. These corporations want influence without accountability. But ownership says we decide what's produced, how it's distributed, and who benefits. It repositions black women not just as storytellers, but story takers and story keepers. See, that's the shift. So when we look at Serena, Venus, and Renee, we're looking at more than just sports icons. We're looking at strategists. They're modeling what it means to own culture, capital, and community. They're taking the hits, endured the criticism, and still planting seeds. And those seeds, they're not just growing individual success. They're growing a movement of ownership-minded, equity-driven black women who aren't asking to be let in. They're demanding to own the whole damn building.
Let's talk labor. Let's go and get into it. Yeah, the WNBA has made some important moves over the past few years. Raised the pay floor, upgraded travel, finally secured basic maternity protection. But now we got to ask the real question. Who's actually leading that charge? And more importantly, who's shaping the terms behind the scenes? Because collective bargaining ain't just about checks, it's about power. If it's the same folks running point every negotiation, if the same voices keep getting pushed to the sidelines, then we ain't building collective power. We just packaging the same old hierarchy with the new logo on it. And here's the tough truth most folks won't say out loud. Just because it's a union don't mean it's free from bias. Race and gender dynamics don't disappear once you walk into a labor meeting. They show up in subtle ways. Who get the mic? Who gets prepped for leadership? Whose issues get top billing and whose get tabled? Black women carry this league on the stat sheets, in the stands, through the culture. But when it's time to speak for the league at the negotiating table, too often someone else has the mic. And when race-based issues come up, like fan harassment or media double standards or the erasure of Black excellence in MVP combos, suddenly that's off topic. Suddenly that's not labor related. No, that is labor, because labor ain't just about salary. It's about safety, dignity, and visibility. And for Black women, those aren't side issues. They're daily conditions. Now let's pan out for a second. Look at the NFL, NBA, MLB. Their unions, they've had power players. Some were polarizing, some were revolutionary, but they were positioned to shape the structure of the sport long term. They created labor to leadership pipelines. They laid tracks for players to become executives, owners, even commissioners. So now we ask, where's the pipeline for Black women in the dub? Who's being prepped to become the next Michelle Roberts? Who's being mentored to run the WNBPA or step into the commissioner's seat? Because let's be real, Black women shouldn't just be the product. They should be running the production. You want to talk about real agency? Then we got to talk about who's shaping the policy. Who's on the union steering committee? Who's learning the legal game? Who's running for player rep? Because that's where the real power gets built. And if the WNBPA is serious about being a model for transformational power in sports, then the leadership pipeline better reflect the league, and not just in name, in strategy, in structure, and in succession. Because Black women aren't just the backbone of the league, they're the moral compass, the culture. They're the culture. They're the edge, and they deserve the seat, the mic, and the blueprint. No more sidelines, no more silence. It's time to lead.
Facts, Auntie. We got to stop pretending that unions are immune to politics. They're full of them. And in the case of the WNBA, those politics can be even more layered because you got racial, gender, and economic hierarchies all intersecting in this one space. So when we talk about union power, we can't just focus on what the contract says. We have to look at who is crafting the language, who is consulted, and whose conditions are centered. And far too often, Black women are either asked to organize the movement and stay quiet during its most high-profile moments. Let's not forget that labor organization has historically been one of the strongest tools for equity. But that only works if the leadership is inclusive and strategic. If Black women are constantly called on to vote, rally, and sacrifice, but not called into the leadership training, legal education, or strategy room, then we're dealing with a one-sided structure. And that's not solidarity. That's exploitation dressed up in union colors. Even inside the sisterhood, we got to talk about accountability. And then there's the bigger picture. What's the plan to groom Black women as sports labor lawyers, negotiators, or agents? Because the league isn't going to hand that power over. That has to be a grassroots, intentional investment from the inside out. The pipeline must start now with leadership seminars, contract education, media literacy, and political organizing tools. That's what building power from the player level looks like. Otherwise, we'll just keep recycling the same narrative and watch different faces enforce the same rules. I'll close this segment like this. Agency without advocacy is hollow. Black women need to be in the rooms, at the table, and on the microphone, not just for symbolic purposes, but to secure structural change. That means union seats, contract negotiations, and even commissioner positions that need to reflect the brilliance and labor of Black women in this game. Because when we lead for the future, not just for the moment.
Let's close this out exactly where the future begins. With Black women taking a blueprint and building the whole damn house. We done laid out the exclusions, the gaps, the imbalance. We done talked about who gets left off the invite list, even when they built the party. But now we pivot to power. Because Black women in sports ain't waiting for equity. We're in engineering. From community investment models to NIL power plays, a new business era is already unfolding. And this time, control, ownership, legacy, they're not optional. They're non-negotiables. Let's talk NIL. That ain't just about some free merch or a check with a logo. This is economic realignment. Black girls, high school to college, are coming in the game with business plans, legal teams, equity stakes in their own name. But here's the move. If we want this shift to stick, we need Black women-led NIL collectives, not the hand-me-down versions, not the we'll get to you later structures. We're talking mentorship, media training, equity contracts, long-term wealth coaching, an infrastructure built by us for us. Because this ain't a pipe dream. It's a survival plan turned into a power strategy. And now, let's get into the tech wave. Athlete DAOs, creator-owned platforms, decentralized media streams. These ain't buzzwords, they're blueprints for liberation. Because when you control the platform, you control the narrative, the revenue, and the reach. But let's keep it 100. If we don't build access into these spaces, Black women are going to get left behind again, even in a so-called new era. So if we're talking a real revolution, then tech equity, financial literacy, and digital ownership got to be baked into every athlete development program from the jump. Because this ain't just about chasing likes or cashing out. It's about securing futures, building legacy, and flipping power back where it belongs. Solidarity. That ain't just hashtags and allyship photo ops. It's policy, pipeline, redistribution, infrastructure. It's making sure the 16-year-old phenom in Mississippi and the 33-year-old W vet both got the tools to not just play the game, but own the league. That's what power looks like in this next chapter. Not borrowed, not begged for, built. We ain't waiting, we building. Let's get into it.
Cess, you hit it. The future doesn't belong to those who wait. It belongs to those who build. And we're seeing Black women in sports become architects of new ecosystems where creativity, commerce, and community come together. But to build something lasting, we have to be just as strategic as we are bold. We can't just break into existing systems. We got to build parallel ones that are rooted in collective ownership and agency. Let's talk community investment models. These aren't just feel-good side projects. They're business strategies centered on impact. Black women athletes are starting scholarship funds, athletic academies, and youth building hubs that don't just give back, they build up. They've created pipelines where young Black girls can see themselves in every position, from trainer to team owner. That's how you shift not just representation, but participation in every part of the industry. And I love that you brought up intergenerational solidarity because this moment requires it. We need Don Stanley sitting at the table with Flaw J. Johnson. We need Asia Wilson mentoring AAU girls, not just for their vertical jump, but for their business acumen. We need Candace Parker producing documentaries and Chingy Umawabi designing media curriculum, because the torch can't just be passed. It has to be placed in steady hands with clear instructions on everything you touch. So what's next? We commodify the blueprint. We build networks that don't dissolve when the season ends. We push for funding, visibility, and institutional support for these new business models. Because real freedom doesn't come from being allowed in. It comes from building your own. And Black women, we've always been master builders. Now we're just building louder with receipts, equity, and our names on the paperwork. And as we wrap up today's episode, let's come back to that big question that's been our guide. Why are Black women, WNBA players, not in every room where decisions are made? It's a question that cuts to the core of power, agency, and equity in sports. We're talking about systems that exclude missed opportunities to lead, the urgent need to build new pathways that center Black women's voices and wealth, not just their talent on the court. Who benefits when Black women are left out? It's not just about individual players. It's about an entire industry that loses when the voices closest to the game are silenced or sidelined. When Black women don't have a seat at the table, decisions get made that don't reflect their realities or priorities. And that means everyone suffers, from players to fans to communities these athletes represent. Waiting for inclusion isn't just risky, it's costly. History shows us that progress is rarely given freely. It has to be demanded, built, and sometimes taken. So the real question is, why Black women aren't everywhere yet? But what are we doing about that to change it?
Amen to that, Lil. Let's be real. The days of passive inclusion, dead and buried. Black women ain't waiting on nobody. We out here building the damn table, blueprinting the foundation, and putting our name on the deed. This ain't just about representation. It's about reclamation. It's about legacy. And that means putting real energy and real dollars behind Black-owned sports brands, Black-led media platforms, and Black women athletes speaking truth at the negotiation table. From pay equity to maternity protections to media rights, we need amplification, not hesitation, and we need accountability too. So ask your favorite teams and leagues the real questions. Where are the Black women in leadership? Who's crafting policy? Who's driving the vision? If the answer is silence, that's not just a problem for Black women, that's a problem for the whole damn industry. So here's what we need from you. Like the video, drop a comment, share it with your people, and bring 10 more voices into this conversation. Because this ain't just about basketball. It's about power, economics, culture, ownership. It's about building a future that hits different and lasts longer. And like we always say, sports are never just about the games we play. They're about the stories we tell and who gets to tell them. At Poly Sports Tea Time, we tell the truth, the whole truth, and we spill that tea till the last drop. Thanks for tapping in. This is Cess, your favorite auntie with Uncle Tendencies, and my co-host in chaos, Political Lil. Y'all know what it is. Stay tuned. Talk soon. We out.